Tonight's mystery is called the Baldoon Mystery. It involves a haunting that occurred in Ontario in the 1820s, ghosts, witches, curses, and a strange black goose. Hope you enjoy. Hello, everybody. My name is Kenton DeYoung, and I'm sitting here with my co-host, Dylan Furman.
Hey.
And this is Unsolved Canadian Mysteries. So, Dylan, how you been?
I've been dandy swell, just great, golly gee.
That's pretty good, man.
Yes.
Good for you. I've been okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Wait, hold on. Hey, Kenton, how have you been?
I'm fine. I'm good.
Wow, I have no, proper, social skills at all. I've just been isolated from people like crazy, just in my basement editing videos.
It's okay.
It was a shock when I went to Toronto last week. It's like, look at all these people. Anyway.
No, so you had fun in Toronto?
Mm-hmm.
So I went to an aquarium?
Yeah, the aquarium was the best part. CN Tower blows.
Did you go looking for the tunnel monster of Cabbagetown?
Okay, I asked people about it.
Oh, did you? Oh,
yeah,
no.
I was like, where's Cabbagetown?
Uh-huh.
And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was like, you don't know where Cabbagetown is? It's like,
oh, no.
Like, no.
Oh,
no.
dear.
I was like, oh, it's a part of the city. I want to see Cabbagetown.
Oh, no.
And then I Googled it to make sure it actually still is called Cabbagetown. It's still called Cabbagetown.
Yeah. Oh, no.
So these people don't even know they're well, in their defense, it's a very large city.
Yeah. And I can't imagine Cabbagetown is the biggest place to
No.
go. No.
I went to Niagara Falls too. That was okay.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I thought it was gonna be bigger. See, I'm kind of an asshole.
I'm glad you had fun, though.
Yeah, it was fun.
I've never actually been outside the airport in Toronto. I had 8 hours there, and I thought I know you can get downtown pretty quick from the airport.
Yes.
And I thought about it, but I'm like, no, I'll just stay at the airport.
Yeah. No. It was during the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, you could have done something.
Yeah, well,
I went to the aquarium.
I know if I went to Toronto, I would easily spend 8 hours doing something, wandering around, going to museums, doing nothing. I know I'll just miss my flight if I do that, so I'll just stay here.
The Royal Museum was pretty great too.
That's the one with all the animals in it, right?
Yeah.
So we were just talking about your trip to Toronto.
Yeah.
And this story actually also takes place in Ontario.
Wow.
Not that far away from Toronto.
Is that in Toronto?
No, not.
I'm just kidding.
Not in Toronto. It's in Ontario. But it's near. It's because it's near Michigan. And so it's all kind of in that area, southern Toronto GTA area. The community doesn't exist anymore. It's called Baldoon, but...
that sounds like a place in Lord of the Rings.
It does. It also sounds like that currency in TikTok, the balloons, but...
Oh.
The balloons, but it's not.
Hmm.
It's not that. In case people on TikTok hear this, it's not that.
It's not that.
Nothing to do with that currency that cats give you on TikTok. Are you familiar with the balloons?
No.
Okay. We won't get into it then.
No, I'm not.
But this is Baldoon, not doubloon.
Okay.
So apparently this is a well-known paranormal story in Ontario.
Okay.
And I had never heard of it until this past week.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very well documented, and I had never heard of it. So we'll talk a bit about Baldoon first, and then we'll get into the story. So Baldoon was a settlement created in 1804 for immigrants from Scotland. Because when the Industrial Revolution kind of kicked off in England, there was an event called the Highland Clearances, where they kicked out a lot of Scottish people.
Right.
Because they're changing the land to be farmland. And all these Scottish people were then immigrated to Canada, and they were set up in this new Baldoon settlement.
Okay.
One of the many places where they were settled, but it was one of them. Now, settlement itself only kind of existed, I think it was until 1818, so only 14 years. But people lived there until 1860. After that, they kind of dispersed, and it became... well, not much is left of the Baldoon settlement now. So they kind of call it a failed settlement, but it served its purpose at the time. And that's where our story takes place.
And that's where our story begins.
Okay. So Donald and Flora McDonald, Scottish, right? So McDonald, of course, right? They one of the first people to immigrate to Baldoon, and they brought with them their son John, who was 6 years old at the time. John would grow up in Baldoon. In 1926, he'd get married and he'd buy his own property. He had this nice property right by the river that went past, a really nice river. He bought this property, and as they were getting settled in it, a neighbor, I think it was 2 yards down or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how big their property is. Okay. Her name was Buchanan, and she asked John if she could buy their land. And John said no. This is my land. Me, my wife, and our future kids, this is where we want to be. And she asked a couple times, and he said no. I'm not selling you my land. Sorry, old lady. It's ours. 3 years into living in this property, strange things started happening at their farm. The first one, his wife and a couple other handmaidens were working in the barn, and they heard a big bang. A support beam in the barn roof had fallen. They went to take a look. That's what it was. It was just a support beam. Everything's still fine. They went back to working in the barn. A few minutes later, a second one fell. Boom. And then a third one fell. Boom. And they got the heck out of there. Then they got John, who investigated, took a look, and the spark plugs were fine. Like, everything seemed normal. It wasn't like there was like a fracture or a rot or anything like that. They happened to all fall out, which is very strange. But then more things started happening. Throughout the day and the night, their house was pelted with rocks, with pebbles, and it continued happening over and over again until every window in their house was broken from these rocks. The rock would hit the house, they'd go outside and look, and there'd be nobody there. So other events would occur too. The roof of the house would start leaking even when it wasn't raining, and small fires would break out around the property, inside the house, outside the house. But this is before the invention of the light bulb, so the house wasn't electrocuted, or electrified. I'm not sure the word. It didn't have electricity yet.
It was not electrocuted.
It wasn't electrocuted yet. The house didn't have electricity yet, so these fires couldn't have been electric based. Something else was causing them. Another time, there was this severe earthquake, and the house rattled, the dishes fell and collapsed, the base shifted. They ran out of the house, and then, because they were safe, they went to check on the neighbors, and the earthquake was seemingly isolated to their own property. It didn't affect the neighbors at all. This would just kind of sound like a family was making stuff up. Right? This is just a bunch of nonsense, some crazy stuff. But then they had visitors also witness these two. Friends, family, guests, that kind of thing. One of these guests was a priest who was preaching in the house at the time, and a rock blasted through the window and almost hit him. Another one saw a loaf of bread dancing on the table. Another guest saw a pot lift itself off the hearth and chase a dog around the yard. From this point on...
They're not supposed to do that, are they?
No, bread's not supposed to dance, and pots aren't supposed to float.
I see.
At this point in time, a lot of people were coming into the town and the house to see it, especially even news reporters were coming in. And there's one account, I think it was in the newspaper, of a knife getting picked up and flying across the room and sticking itself in the wall. It got so bad that they brought in Reverend McDormand, a Methodist preacher, to try and do an exorcism. And it didn't do anything. If anything, it's made it worse.
An exorcism made it worse.
That's usually how it goes, right? Following the exorcism, a lot of the livestock on the property started to die. They started wasting away. Guns would start going off inside of the house. They would hear invisible men marching in the kitchen all hours of the night.
There's a lot.
A lot of stuff, right? In a very small house. A man, a Michigan schoolmaster named Robert Baker, would then come across the border and try and help the family. He had an interest in witchcraft, so he put like a horseshoe over the door and invoked the Holy Trinity. It didn't do anything, but it got him arrested for practicing witchcraft. He was eventually acquitted for the charges, but he was found guilty of it. So there's a case of someone being found guilty of witchcraft or practicing witchcraft in Canada. That's actually a fun fact about the Canadian justice system is you can do magic and witchcraft. Now you can, but you can't pretend to do it. So like, so if you
explain that,
if you can actually do it, that's fine. But if you lie about it and pretend to do witchcraft, then you break the law.
Right.
Yeah. In case you ever wondered.
Good. It's good to know.
Yeah. So, if someone's like legitimately like a psychic, well, they're either they're breaking the law every day or, they're true psychics.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's a weird law. It's up there with the fencing law. Or the not fencing, the
sword fighting?
Trial by combat. Or sword fighting. Or whatever it was, yeah.
What is it?
Oh,
now you have to explain it.
Now I have to explain it. I think it's like it's dueling. You can duel now. They made that a law after the longest time. They allowed dueling.
I don't understand.
I don't know the exact...
If you piss me off, I can challenge you to a duel, and if you agree...
Yes.
We could do whatever duel we want. It's completely legal.
I think so. Yes.
Kenton, I don't believe you.
It was a big deal when they brought it back in 2017 about this dueling law they brought back.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we're going to have to Google that, viewers.
I am pretty certain they brought that back.
Wow.
Okay. Anyway, back to the story. All right. So the events climaxed one day when the McDonalds were out of house. They were having brunch somewhere. And a couple of other people from the community were going past the house on a boat. And because nobody was home to put out these sudden fires that kept popping up in the house caught on fire. And when these people going past on the boat saw the house, it was in a blaze. It was already burning. So they pulled the boat over. They couldn't help the house. The house was lost. But they went to the neighbor's house and helped to move all the furniture out just in case the fire was to jump between the properties.
Right.
Thankfully, it didn't happen. But when when McDonald's returned, the house was burned down and gone. So the neighbors all came together and gave him what they could, and they set him up at his brother-in-law's house. But the night they moved into the brother-in-law's house, they started hearing those pebbles hitting the walls outside the house again. So they didn't want whatever happened to them to happen to his house too, so that the next day they moved out and they set up a tent on their old property to try and get their life back in order.
Yeah, good luck burning down the tent.
Right? Like, yeah. So they decided like they couldn't live in a tent, so they did what they could. They built up a little log house and they lived in there. The moment they moved it back into their wooden log house, smaller house, the hauntings resumed almost immediately. John brought in a Protestant missionaries to try and help. He brought in medicine men to try and help. Brought in Catholic priests to try and help. Nothing could make a difference in this house. Nothing worked. John was losing hope that there was going to be a solution to this. But then a traveler came into the community, and the traveler mentioned that there was a doctor about 80 miles away, a 2-day journey, and the doctor had a daughter with the gift of second sight, which is like the ability to understand things, maybe see paranormal stuff, come to otherworldly conclusions and find solutions. And normally John wouldn't follow this kind of stuff, but he was desperate. So he and the Methodist preacher who did the exorcism earlier, they got on horses and they traveled to this community to meet with the doctor. They found the doctor and they asked to speak to his daughter, who was 15 years old at the time. They told her the situation that was happening, and she went into her room to consult her moonstone. Now, I don't know what a moonstone is. Do you know what a moonstone is?
I don't know. Is that like...
Today, I would imagine it would be like a rock from the moon, but not back then. So I don't know, maybe just a round rock?
Maybe it's like, has to be some kind of like crystal thing, you know, like when people are like, oh, I'm getting my chakras all send up with my crystals.
Yep.
Maybe it's like I'm getting my moon zone, my moonstone mixed with my moon zones.
Yeah, sure.
Trying to get in the moon zone with my moonstone.
You know, it's probably closer to being the truth than
than it is. Yeah. Right, not right.
So yeah, anyway, she consulted the moonstone for 3 hours.
Why aren't you telling me anything?
Trying to get water out of a stone kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then she came out of the house, or out of the room, and she said she has found an answer to their problems. And she said, is there an old lady in your life who isn't happy that you're living where you're living? And John said, yeah, Buchanan, a few blocks down or whatever. They want to live on our property. And she said, okay, have you seen a black goose walking around your property? And John thought, he's like, oh, I guess so. Like, he had other things going on, like his house burning down, guns going off, fires getting started, you know. I guess, yeah, there was a black goose hanging out. So the daughter said to John, go home, melt down some silver. Lead won't work. You gotta use silver. Put in your gun. When you see the black goose again, shoot it in its wing, and it'll solve your problems. John's like, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. So they 2-day journey back home, gets home to their smaller home now, right? Melts down some silver, puts it in his gun, and he goes looking for this goose. He sees the goose, shoots it, hits it in its wing, and I don't know exactly what happened to the goose. It didn't die. I don't know if it couldn't have flown away because it got its wings shot.
Yeah, it's probably screwed for sure. Like,
right.
That goose is like compromised at this point.
I don't know if it swam away, but anyway, it left the area, right? And the haunting stopped.
Okay.
A few days later, John is walking home, and he walks past Buchanan's house, the old lady, and sees her on the front step, and her arm is in a sling. She waves at him, and he waves at her, and he carries on. And from then on, the hauntings never happened. So the story's weird, right?
Wait, well, was it, say the sling part again?
The woman, Buchanan, had her arm in a sling.
Okay.
She waved at him, he waved at her, and carried on. The hauntings never happened.
Okay.
So the idea is that she was the goose.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
And she was the one causing the mischief, and she was like a witch kind of thing.
I thought you were I was totally lost there. I was like, what the heck does this lady with it? Anyway, yep.
Okay, so crazy story, right? We got hauntings, we got fires, we got a witch and a goose, we got a like a second sighted young woman, right? All these weird things. Clearly, it's a fake story, right?
Okay.
Okay. Well, the son of John, Neil McDonald, 40 years later, he heard this story and thought, that's bizarre. My dad never told me this. So he asks all the people who grew up in Baldoon. He interviews 26 people, neighbors, shopkeepers, priests, everyone. He gets a collection of these works. Actual witnesses who saw this, who saw the burning, who helped rebuild the house, all this stuff. It's very well documented, but it sounds crazy. So what do you think of this story?
I think this story is crazy, Kenton. But there's one thing I feel like you didn't touch on.
Okay, all right, sure.
The fact that we are not dealing with a witch, Kenton.
Okay, sure.
We're dealing with a weregoose.
Yeah. The silver, that makes sense.
The goose was shot with a silver bullet.
Yes, I didn't even make that connection. You're right.
Changing the transformation and curing the woman of her weregoose wolf syndrome.
Like lycanthropy, but with geese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lichen geesey.
Geesanthropy. Yes.
Yes.
I never made the connection. And the thing is, we just did a thing about the Wendigo a
Yes.
couple episodes ago. Same thing, silver bullets. I never made that connection between werewolves and the goose.
And the goose. Maybe the witch cursed that lady. Or maybe that lady was a cursed witch who turns to a... Whenever there's a fire, she turns to a goose. Look, I'm just spitballing. What do you think, Kenton?
So what I know about witchcraft is not very extensive, but I think witches can project themselves into animals.
Right.
Called like familiars. I think that's what it is.
Yep.
And I'm thinking she did that, project herself as a goose, black goose, and was the one throwing the rocks at the house.
In goose form.
Yes. So then John and his family rush outside to, get somebody, and this be a goose wandering
Right.
around, right? So like, oh, it's just a stupid goose again, right? Like they wouldn't make that connection. But then how would the goose start the fires, or how would the goose do other things? So I think there was more paranormal stuff going on than just like
I
the
don't know.
goose throwing rocks.
Wait, what? Sorry, when was this again?
This was in 1829.
Hold on. Did they have matches then?
Because they had matches.
When? Hold on. I'm Googling this. When were matches invented? 1826.
3 years before.
Okay. So,
Wow.
obviously, the goose
Okay.
had some matches.
All right. Yeah. Hidden in its wing.
Yeah.
Wing. Yeah. Okay.
I could totally see a goose figuring out how to light a match.
Oh, if it's a witch goose, I'm sure they
Right.
could. Yeah. All right.
You just like clamp it between your wings and, right?
Yeah. Sure. An arsonist goose. Yeah.
Confirmed.
Okay. So this story, it's called the Baldoon Mystery, and it's known throughout Ontario for its stories of witchcraft and hauntings and all that. And it's called the son wrote a book called The Baldoon Mystery, an intriguing story of witchcraft near Wallsburg, Ontario, because Baldoon's gone now.
Right.
Its closest city is Wallsburg. So it's very well documented case of witchcraft. It's kind of weird to me that the only person who actually got like arrested for witchcraft was just that teacher,
Right.
and not the witch down the road. Like that would be a compelling case to take to a court, like much more than, oh, he put a horseshoe on the wall, so
Yeah.
he must be a witch. It could be that loophole that she was actually doing witchcraft, so she couldn't be convicted of the pretending to be witchcraft
Right.
law. Maybe, I don't know.
Right.
I don't want to get into 1829 legalities of witchcraft. So this story is a little bit different. It's solved, but it's not solved, right? Because like we know who did it, but it's kind of weird. It was the goose, the witch goose.
Yeah, the weregoose,
the
obviously.
weregoose.
It's not really a mystery anymore, is it, Kenton?
No, but it's a weird story that they say is a mystery.
Even though we just solved it.
If you don't believe in the story of witches, then it's very strange what happened in this house and about why there was a black goose and everything. It's a very interesting story.
Right.
So I think that's all I got for tonight's mystery.
Nice.
We solved it with the weregoose solution.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you as always for joining me tonight, Dylan.
It's been a pleasure, Kenton.
It's been an interesting night. As always, my name is Kenton DeYoung, and I'm sitting here with my co-host Dylan Fairman, and this has been Unsolved Canadian Mysteries.